I would now like to hand over to our first speaker, Sister Imelda Poole. Sister Imelda, you have the floor, please.
Good evening, good morning, I suppose we need to say today, because I can see there's many people coming from different parts of the world to this webinar. Thank you so much, Michel, for your invitation. It's truly a privilege to always be working with you. You are a pioneer and an icon for us working against human trafficking, because you have launched so many webinars and trainings for people in the field, and we really do acknowledge this with great pride and honour that we are able to work with you in this way to combat human trafficking in the world. So thank you, Michel. Ingrid, it's a pleasure to work with you too on this webinar. I know Sawadi very well, as we have good collaboration with you in Germany and across Europe. So it's lovely to meet you here. The first slide that Eve is going to show for my presentation is a slide which has many pictures within it of women who in different ways are speaking out. And the theme for the International Women's Day in 2022 is Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable World. So here we have, in the middle, are Nigerian women, and Patricia Ibulem would identify with me very closely with this picture, as we worked together in Rome on and off, visiting the Nigerian women in the centre not far from the Vatican, where they were held with many other women en route to being deported. They were all trafficked. And it is a very terrible day today that we think of. That picture could be Ukrainian women. They could be the Ukrainian women that we've had many pictures across our screen seeing, and also through our colleagues in RENATE, working in Moldavia, in Poland, in Romania, in Germany indeed, right across the borders of the Ukraine. Our colleagues even in Kyiv and Lviv are suffering as we speak, with the thousands and thousands of women and children who have fled from the war and even as we speak trying to escape. So when we look at gender equality, we're looking at the women and the children, the women who look after the children, the women who care for the carers, the women who care for the elderly, the women who are made vulnerable by the very fact that they are women and have to be the strong people in their family, but are the ones who suffer from domestic violence. They are the ones who often don't have enough money because their partners may have gone or they are using the money for drink. We know the situations where women have to be strong. So we have pictures here of survivors of human trafficking meeting Pope Francis, women who have been brave enough to stand out, to speak. Have to be strong. We have pictures here of survivors of human trafficking. Yes, okay, I'll carry on now. And we have Mary Ward, my foundress from England, who 400 years ago plus spoke out for women who were not given an education. And we have this still 400 years on, women vulnerable to child marriage, to being trafficked in this way, sold off to a partner who's much older than him. We have these situations of women having to campaign and walk the walk, saying no more stolen sisters, children being taken from the streets and sold into the brothels for prostitution. We hear of this in our own countries, where I am in Albania and in places right across the world. So we need to look at these pictures and know that this theme is very important, gender equality for a sustainable world. Thank you. So we're looking quickly now through some of these slides to look at the history of women campaigning for their human rights. And we move right through from women not being able to go to school, which is still being campaigned about in Albania today, women who were sold even in 1850, but legally as slaves. And now we have women since 1900 having a vote to be able to cry out and vote for the politicians who will speak for human rights for women. And then straight up to 2022, we now have slaves being sold, up to 80 million of them across the world illegally. And yet the numbers are becoming greater and greater. And although I've worked in this field for 16 years, and I'm sure others much longer, we know that we're not winning at all, that there is no really goodwill right across the world to combat this terrible crime. So women, children are being sold as meat on the market over and over again, and only 1% of modern day slaves are being identified today. These are the statistics from the OSCE and the Council of Europe. Only 0.99% of traffickers are prosecuted. What a disgraceful world we live in, that so many human rights can be abandoned to allow this phenomena to be increasing with so little done to diminish it and to indeed combat the crime. Thank you. So, right the way through history, women have stood out for human rights because they are the ones that care for the family and that try to keep the family together. Yet at the same time, we know that the demands women are making, here we have them in the French Revolution, shouting out for bread, for survival, for life. In our world today, in 2022, women are still speaking out against patriarchy. There is very little gender equality. There is a lack of women in key leadership roles. We have still an economic inequality and a lack of respect for caregiving in the family, and women who have got the ability and the leadership skills are still trying to navigate their career and motherhood. There are not the facilities given in our world today to enable women to take their chair alongside the man. And this impacts human trafficking. Because women are diminished, they are made vulnerable, they are made grasping for straws to survive in thousands and thousands of places in vulnerable parts of our world, including Ukraine. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in honor of this day, "We also today recognize that in too many areas the clock of women's rights is moving backwards. The COVID pandemic has kept girls and women out of schools and workplaces. They face rising poverty and rising violence. They do the vast majority of the world's unpaid but essential care work. They are the targets of violence and abuse just because of their gender. And this is at the heart of the trafficking of human beings, and especially women and girls who struggle in poverty and are often sold into the world of trafficking because they struggle to get a better life and hope." Malala said, "We realize the importance of the woman's voice when we are silenced." So tonight, we are raising our voice again against human trafficking, as it is our day, it is our Women's Day to do this. Thank you. So we move on to RENATE, to look at what is RENATE doing about this heinous crime. This is our vision and policy, but what I'd like to emphasize is the fact that we're a network collaborating, as with Sawadi, as with thousands of other organizations around the world and especially in Europe. We are now focusing on organizing our activities with corporations that share our anti-trafficking ambitions. And if you go to the website called Ethisphere, you will see about 100 odd companies that have been accepted as ethical. And one of the ethics that they have to abide by is to work against human trafficking right the way through their supply chains. And it's really important for us working to combat human trafficking as women to realize that we can get allies even in the world where the corporates are indeed feeding the traffickers, if you like, and giving them the money to get cheap labor, cheap goods, cheap services. So RENATE has as its very heart of its policy to be trauma informed. In other words, trauma informed, we want to have our survivors at the heart of our work and to inform us of our way forward. We also ensure that it is human rights informed and based in relation to the law, and that the victim or survivor is understood. In other words, we have to take time with our survivors in order that they're given the full possibility of recovery. And that means all lawyers, all workers against human trafficking need to be trauma informed from every angle. Thank you. This film is going to be the survivors speaking out. We want them to have their day today, and they're all young girls saying how they desire a better world in the future for themselves.
Kanë nevojë për mbështetje psikologjike, ligjore, strehim, shkollim, drejtësi. Policia do të ndryshoj sjelljen me vajzat që janë trafikuar, që të ndihen më mirë.
Formimi dhe sensibilizimi në programet mosimore do të rrisë njohuri dhe kapacitete dhe njerëzit do ishin më të vetëdijshëm ndaj mashtrimeve dhe nuk do binin prej atyre. Domethënë kjo gjë mund të parandalojë trafikimin.
Institucionet e drejtësisë duhet të trajtojnë viktimat në mënyrë më të ndjeshëm, më njerëzore dhe mos i shohin sikur të kenë bërë një faj.
Jam shumë larg nga familja dhe e kam shumë të vështirë që t'i takoj Sara që dëshiroj. Një gjë e nevojshme, domethënë, sipas mendimit tim, është prania më shumë qendrave sociale ose shërbimit social në Shqipëri.
Mësueset dhe psikologët vetë janë më të vëmendshëm në të shajat e trafikimit. Dhe duhet të denoncojnë në polici.
Those women, as it said in the note at the end, were from and being supported by different foundations in Albania that we work in collaboration with, shelters, our advice and service centres with Mary Ward Loreto, and reception centres. We work closely with the local municipality, with the police, with justice, to try and bring every possibility of new life back to survivors that are deported back from different European countries into Albania, or indeed are rescued through our mobile units across the country. This is some of the pictures of our Mary Ward Loreto Foundation in Albania, who have got advice and service centres and are part of the national referral mechanism in Albania, so have referrals from abroad and within the country. But also we focus on prevention in big ways. We have many projects for things like safe migration, for economic and human empowerment for youth, for men's projects, have been implemented to try and address the dysfunctional family situation that is very big in Albania. Do you know Albania is now known as one of the 4 electoral autocracies in Europe? And they include, I mean, it's quite shameful to think that Albania is alongside Russia, Belarus and Kazakhstan. Quite tragic a situation as the poorest country in Europe. So Mary Ward Loreto is a valiant team of staff that work courageously to combat this crime in a country where there are very few facilities and very few statutory services functioning. So we ask all our listeners really to hear the cry really of the survivors and the workers working in such poor conditions. And we stand alongside in Albania, welcoming the Ukrainian survivors that have been able to flee the war. And it's incredible how we've also welcomed Afghanistani women and families and Syrian in Albania, despite the fact that we are the poorest country. Our culture is one of hospitality, openness and welcome. And it is a tragedy that we have so many victims of trafficking. We're now the highest number in England for the last 3 years of traffic victims. And we have a huge number of trafficked within the country because of extreme poverty and dysfunctionality. Thank you. And here we have my congregation's social centre in Calcutta in India. And we have women here, as in Albania, standing out for victims of trafficking. In this particular social centre, the huge need is for the children. There are thousands of street children in Calcutta, and so many of them are picked up by traffickers and sold into the brothels. So the strategy is to develop ambassadors within all the local communities in the suburb areas of Calcutta and right through up to the tea picking plantations where we have social centres right through up to Darjeeling in the north of Bengal. And what they're doing in this beautiful centre is to train the young teenagers to be leaders, and they're forming small groups of vigilante, and they're watching out for each other on the streets, in the villages where there's massive poverty. And it's incredible the success story that we have against human trafficking amongst these poor communities where it's just pure compassion for each other that they're looking out, and indeed they know what to do, they're trained, they have the helplines, the police are informed, they know what to do with these vigilantes and leadership groups, and they're all working hand in glove to combat human trafficking right in the streets, in the ground where the poverty and the terrible vulnerability is being experienced. Thank you. This film has been made as a teaser film of a large one that is being funded by the United States with a Norwegian team of young women who are really committed in the most extraordinary way to combat human trafficking through film. And they decided to choose the road towards the sisters around the world who are working against human trafficking. And this is a little vignette of it all.
It's a hidden trade in human beings, but you've probably never seen it. It happens beyond our gaze.
Trafficking is a business. It's either the second or the third largest income generator for organised crime in the world.
Unfortunately, victims of trafficking are seen first and foremost as migrants. They seem to be criminalised again and again.
He creado relaciones con estas mujeres fuertes en este campo de la prostitución, de la trata, de la inmigración. Aprendí a conocer mi alma también, mi interior.
There's no doubt about it that we have something more powerful than any other trafficking network. We have a trusted relationship as female sisters working across the world.
we decided on our own to pick up that apostolate.
So we go to the street to meet them, to try to leave the street and give them possibilities.
Esto es aquí la unidad, una unidad móvil con todo lo que sirve para venir encuentro a las mujeres de la calle.
Mendoj që shkaku numër 1 në Shqipëri I trafikimit dhe I gjanave që ndodhin me femrën janë numri 1 është pagesa, është ekonomia.
La alegría más grande, ¿no? Que alguna se decida a hacer el camino de retorno y encuentre una vida nueva. Esperamos que hagan un trabajo psicológico, pero es un proceso largo, muy largo y muy difficile.
Le famiglie non accettano, non ci sono altri punti di riferimento, noi dobbiamo essere pronti di accogliere.
Siento la necesidad de interagir con todas las religiones, con todas las culturas y con toda la creación, ¿no?
We, as sisters, we're millions.
These 2 young women were on our tables as we worked together with Pope Francis to develop the priorities against human trafficking for the Church. And these truly were inspirational young women. And we have to take our hats off to those survivors all around the world who are leading us in this massive task to combat human trafficking. Thank you. So finally, we end with the words of Pope Francis. When women have the opportunity to fully pass on their gifts to the entire community, the very manner by which society is understood and organized becomes positively transformed by it, managing to better reflect the substantial unity of the human family. And indeed, what Pope Francis is indicating here is that the female brain actually, when really invited to be part of leadership and decision making, has a lateral thinking and a deeper perception that is extraordinary for decision making. And in Ukraine, the experts are saying that if you don't bring women to the table for the peacemaking, you're not going to get peace, and there isn't one woman there. So I end on that note because I know Ingrid is going to follow it on with a lot more information about Ukraine, but thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Sister Imelda, for your very powerful statement. And indeed, thanks for history and videos on best practices in Albania and in India. Now, very grateful for your contribution.